Good morning. Buenos días. Vamos a esperar un minutico. We're going to wait one more second or two for the audience to filter in. Vamos a conversar hoy en inglés, pero tenemos interpretación simultánea hecha por la paisa Gloria Mejía, que está en Medellín. Entonces, si quieren escuchar el conversatorio en español, pueden oprimir el botón Interpretation que está abajo y pueden escuchar todo en español. Bueno, y a ver, esperamos, ya viene más gente. Bueno, pues empezamos entonces. Well, welcome everybody to the 6th edition of Buscando el Centro, or Looking for the Center in Colombia. It's a series that Sandra, Borda, and I have been co-moderating, presented by the Canadian Council for the Americas, on precisely that, trying to find a political center in Colombia, not just now, but going forward, and obviously with eyes on the election next year. It's for those who follow Colombia closely know that this is really one of the key issues in how electoral politics will set up in the coming year. Before we begin the discussion today with Sergio Fajardo, I have to do a couple of housekeeping notes. One is I just mentioned in Spanish. For those who are listening in English but prefer to listen in español, pueden oprimir. You can push the button Interpretación that's below, que está abajo, and you can listen to la interpretación de Gloria Mejía. One future event, we have a number that we will be presenting, as those who follow us closely know, we do a lot of. It'll be June 7th, and it'll be the day after. It's the day after series, the presidential election in Peru, with Denise Rodriguez Olivares, Freddy Vargas Lama, two great analysts, young analysts, and the Congressman Alberto Belaunde will be part of that, and one more panelist to be announced. A tape or video of this conversation today, like all of the ones that we do, and particularly in this series, will be available tonight or tomorrow at our website at ccacanada.com. And I think if I'm looking over my list of housekeeping items, I don't think I have any more. But anyway, welcome, Sergio. Those who follow Colombia, and even those who don't follow closely, know Sergio very well. Amongst his many positions, he was mayor of Medellin. He was governor of the state of Antioquia, which everybody in Antioquia would say is the most important state. Maybe other Sandra sitting in Bogota might have another point of view, but welcome Sergio and welcome Sandra. Thank you for both of you for joining us today. So with that, maybe we'll start off, Sergio, get right into it. The building a coalition and maintaining a coalition is never an easy thing during a campaign or pre-campaign, and certainly running a government. The Coalición de la Esperanza that you're part of has appeared from the outside to have done a pretty good job of holding together people from slightly different points of view or varying points of view for a common project. And so we want to talk a little bit about what those points are in the project, as we have with the other folks that we've talked to. But recently, very recently, there was a schism in the coalition. Angela Robledo left the coalition at about the same time that, at least the reading of the chronology, is about the time that the coalition put out a statement about the paro, that's the strikes that are going on in Colombia. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the importance of that schism, why it came to be, and how you would think it affects the coalition going forward.
Okay, good morning, Ken, Sandra. Nice to be with you here. And hello, everyone. Let me explain quickly and directly to the point that you are mentioning, Ken. We began talking by the end of the year 2019, September, actually, before the elections. We were invited by Iván Marulanda to get a group of people. Back then, the Galán brothers, Roy Barreras, Jorge Robledo, Humberto de la Calle, Juan Fernando Cristo, and myself. And we began talking just about politics, how we saw things and so on. And then came COVID, and we stopped talking. And last year, by the end of the year, we got back to our conversations about the possibility of building a coalition in a way that would be a political expression in the next election. Then Angelica Lozano from the Green Party began taking part of the conversations, and we designed, or we said, well, let's get things done, let's formalize what we have been doing and make progress towards an political expression outside the extremes, just to use a very basic definition, which is usually called within the discussions in Colombia, the center, whatever that means. And we may talk about that later. And that's what we were doing. Actually, I can show you here, just a second. Just as an example. This is my book,
Okay.
This is January 12th, 2021. This is I write to my friends and say, well, here is a possible way of going on about building this coalition. And I suggested 3 steps, some points that we could go on and work on them, and then have our coalition acting publicly. And basically, we began doing this. Now, we began by talking about something that it's always there, wherever I have been, which is the basic ethic principles about politics. That's part of a discussion of what we share and how we can express an agreement about politics and ethics in politics. We began working on very basic programmatic principles, not the program, but some principles that we all should follow about the ones that we agree. And actually, we wrote a sort of a political manifesto, a short presentation saying why we are together, and the discussion about having a single list to take part in the Congress elections next year, in particular for the Senate, to have just one list, to have an impact. And our purpose was, we are going to have the primaries March next year, list, so that we will be taking part in the congressional elections. And our purpose was, we get there, we have a very good group of numbers of Congress associated with the coalition, and a person who would be the presidential nominee that would take part in the first round in the Colombian election. That was the project. And then began working on possible ways of being together on what to do. In particular, I myself, and I think everyone, we regarded ourselves as a platform that we set up these basic principles, and then ask other people to come and share and take part on this construction that we wanted to do, and eventually take part in the political discussions in our country, and do things together, organize, for example, from my point of view, a communications office, and getting together all this view, understanding that we are very different in many senses, but understanding the richness of building such a construction with different views. And we took ourselves very seriously, in the sense that everyone sitting there was considered as an equal in political terms, and that's what we were working. That was the beginning of the whole thing. I understand that a few of my friends have been here. Juanita Gubertus came here to explain what we have done. And actually she talked about the principles that we had and so on. And that's in there. Here they are. And that was all set. Now, what we had to do then is how we get things moving. And Angela Maria Robledo came in later because she had been invited by the Green Party to be part of all these things. And in principle, and she would be getting into the Green Party, back to the party where she belonged before she resigned in order to be a Petro's presidential running mate and 2018. So she came in there and began taking part. And within the Green Party, something in the middle of the whole thing happened, which was they had 5 presidential candidates that, or pre-candidates, whatever you say, so that they wanted to be the nominees by the Green Party to be part of the primaries that we will be holding next year. So that's the circumstance. Those are the circumstances that the Green Party had. So they had discussions, internal discussions about Ivan Marulanda, Jorge Londoño, Antonio Sanguino, Sandra Ortiz, Camilo Romero, Carlos Amaya, and so they had plenty of discussions about how they were going to deal with this and manage those discussions, because we are building the coalition here. Actually, these persons, all of them began taking part in the discussions that we had, all of them coming from the Green Party, with the exception of one person. And then we realized that there were many things that were within the concern of the Green Party that were taking part in front of us. The discussions that we were having in the what we wanted to do and wanted to follow. The agreements were already there. The programs, the basic principles, as I mentioned, we were already agreed on upon them. But then this created a situation that was difficult to handle. And I am going to explain a couple of things that may add something to the conversation that we have today, and then go on. The Green Party said, we are part of the coalition. Formal decision. They have several instances within the party where they discuss and make decisions. And they actually said, and we open up the door so that everyone who wants to come in here is welcome. For example, since January, I talked to them and said, what would it take for Compromiso Ciudadano, the movement that I lead, to come to be part of the Green Party? Angela Maria Robledo, actually, she came in there and she's, I don't know how much she has advanced or not, but she's expecting to know how she can get in there as a member of the Green Party under what circumstances. As of today, I never received an answer. I talked to them, friendly conversations, how this could be and so on, but never had an answer saying, these are the rules that we have. So if you want to be part of the Green Party with a movement, these will be the conditions and so on. All of this, I have to remark, has been carried out in a very friendly atmosphere. This is not that we are fighting and we have terrible discussions. And after all this time, then we realized that we were stuck because we couldn't do anything. We wouldn't go out together, maybe say a little thing. And from the political point of view, we weren't taking part in the national discussion as the coalition. We were, as I said, we were stuck. We didn't know how to proceed. The instances that the Green Party has, the discussions that they have, Mr. Romero is against the coalition, but he's from the Green Party and so on. There are many discussions that we understand. Nothing unnatural, but discussions, political discussions that they had to deal with. And actually, we decided that we were going to go and talk as a coalition with President Duque uh, almost a month ago, 3 months, 3 weeks ago. That was a discussion. We went there. They came. The Green Party members, pre-candidates, they took part in this whole discussion, but we couldn't do any more together. To say, what do we do with respect to what is happening? And we made a decision. The persons who are not within the Green Party, my situation was always particular because many people in Colombia think that I am a member of the Green Party. As a matter of fact, I ran as governor with the aval of the Green Party. The coalition that we built for 2018, it was with the Green Party. Claudia Lopez was my running mate, my partner. So I've been very close to the Green Party. Many people from Compromiso Ciudadano, we don't have the ability to give avales, and many people came into the Green Party to take part in elections and have been elected as members of the Green Party. So my situation was particular within this, but given the circumstances, we said, well, listen, we have to go on and work. And we want, what is happening in Colombia is very difficult. I mean, that's rather obvious. And we want to act and to have a political presence, and we cannot wait any longer. And that's what happened. And not that Angela Maria Robledo left the coalition, because that's not correct. She came because the Green Party, and we talked to her, and we showed her what we were planning, and we talked about it and discussed it. And she said that she had come into this place because she was invited by the Green Party. And well, she's staying. I don't know what she's doing within the Green Party. And we said, we are going to take a time and we are going to go on and work. And that's where we stand. Such a long story in the middle of so many interesting issues, but that's life. And we have to talk about these things, even in English. And you can imagine, I never talked about the coalition in English.
There's always a first time.
And we can get forum for it. Sandra, please.
Yeah,
Very good company.
I want to get into a couple of things before we start talking about the political platform, because it seems to me, first of all, that this is such a bad timing for this to happen, right? I mean, you would expect at this point of a story that in the middle of such a crisis, the coalition would come up to the front, right, and come up with not only a position, shared by all of you. As you said, you have that position, but also, something a little bit more proactive than just a declaration. So first of all, I'm wondering if there's, a sort of reflection, a sort of a internal process, because it seems to me that this thing happening right now, it's going to be very damning for the coalition. At this point of the story, the last thing that you want is give the the monopoly of the reaction to this crisis to Petro, and apparently he's the only one that has a political position right now, and it's an important sort of actor at this point. So I'm wondering if you guys have thought, about the effects of this happening in this precise moment. And then the other question that I have, just to get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty of this, this political sort of puzzle in which you guys are, has to do with the alternative of other movements or organizations to have the role that the Green Party has had so far. I'm thinking, for example, about the Nuevo Liberalismo and Robledo's movement. I mean, if it's not the Green Party, the one who's gonna provide the political party umbrella for the coalition, is there any chance that you guys can think about some other organization? And lastly, I just wanna ask you what you think is going to happen in the future, how you see this small, well, I don't know how big it is. I want to think that it's small, but this is small crisis within the coalition to be solved in the future. It's going to be solved in the near future. It's going to take long. This is the end of it. I mean, what's your forecast for this?
Okay. Well, first, we agree that, as I said, we were stuck in the middle of what is happening in Colombia. And as I mentioned, we decided to go to talk to the president, and within the Green Party, there was quite a confrontation because some people were going in there. It was the coalition, but one guy who is a candidate didn't go, and it's against the coalition. And that's the sort of problems that we were stuck. So it would have been much better to be together and acting as I showed you in this project that we had, but it didn't happen. So we decided, let's do it. I'm sorry. Everyone was sorry. There was no one happy with the things that happened, but we had it clear that we had to do it. And we could drag on and stay there and try a little thing here and there, and we make a decision, which is the best, I think. It's the best decision, and move on and don't look back. And let's see how we move on, what we do to be part of what is happening in Colombia. And at the same time, remember that one of the characteristics of the coalition is that the members of this coalition, we are not going to be together all the time. There are some spaces that we share, but we are going to compete among ourselves. So everyone would be free to go out and take part and present positions within the Colombian situation now, and that's in there, and no more. That's it. I hope it doesn't take very long to be in this situation, but I don't want to be a forecaster for what happens within the Green Party. I am very respectful always in all senses, and I have never become involved within the discussions of the Green Party, even though I have many friends who are there. I haven't said a single word about what is happening there. I have been stoic about what is happening. I received plenty of insults, and I haven't uh, spoken a single word about what is happening there. And I hope we can be together. I want to be together, but they have to solve the differences that they have. And I don't think it's going to be very damaging, Sandra, on the other side. It's a year, the elections is a year away. There's plenty of time. We are crazy in Colombia because many things are happening every day. Is really draining what is happening in the street, the uncertainties, the difficulties that Colombian people are going through. This is very damaging what is happening in our country. And emotionally, everyone involved is taking it's cost, it has a cost within the social emotions in our country. But the elections are in May next year, a year from today. And we are acting as if the elections were next year, next month, and there is a tense atmosphere here, political atmosphere in all senses, and I think we have time to position ourselves. This situation requires a very deep understanding. From my point of view, this is an inflection point in Colombian history. This is one of the things that would be studied from years from now. Actually, Sandra began studying this phenomenon because this has, we all know that this all began in the year 2019 and associated with young people going to the streets. And Sandra actually wrote a book that I read about what happened. And this is a continuum. The COVID, the pandemic was in there, but this is a change, and we didn't, I never, and I don't know, I don't think anyone could foretell what was going to happen in this last month, the dimensions of what is happening. I think, I don't know, we knew that there were going to be things happening. The social protest would be in there, but I don't think anyone calculated the dimension that it has. And now we have to understand that, pay very careful attention. And in politics, there would have to be a solution. But this is a new chapter that is going to be written in Colombian's political history from my point of view. And we are going to be part of that chapter. Requires a word that is not very common, wisdom, serenity to me, to handle all these issues. So there is time, and I think there's plenty of time, but it's a new world, I think, in the terms of politics. We have been up to here, the polarization. I don't know if you want to talk about those things, but I stop there. And
Just one last question about the status of the coalition, and then we'll go ahead with the main discussion issues in this process. So the plan that you guys in the coalition had before to undergo through this, I don't know how they call them, primaries, I guess, this pre-election process within the coalition and among the candidates, is that plan still on, or?
for sure,
Okay,
sure.
okay.
Now, I didn't answer all the questions that the three ones that you asked before in a one, but
The only
uh,
one that was left was the one about the other political
right,
parties.
that's what I was saying. Now, we are going to have other groups coming into the coalition. There is Dignity, which is a political party now. I hope the new Liberals has the formal structure, but it's through a discussion at the Constitutional Court whether they have or not the political rights and become a formal political party. And there has been an advance in conversations with ASI, which is another political party, Colombia Renaciente. There have been discussions with them, and I'm sure we are going to have more within the coalition that we are building. That's going to happen because there is something very difficult these days, which is another way of taking part in the political competition here in Colombia, which is associated with getting out and collecting signatures in order to present yourself as an independent civic candidate. That's going to be impossible in the circumstances that we have, because who is going to sign in the street a for someone in the middle of the street with the restrictions that we have, the difficulties that we have? So that is going to happen, Sandra. I hope many more people are going to be working with us. We have the basic agreements that will be the way of incorporating other people to the coalition. And I am very hopeful. I think there is quite a challenge. And I don't think the picture that we have today will remain a year from now. And as a matter of fact, I think that the person who is going to lead this country, Colombia, next year is within the coalition.
Thank you, Sergio. The other candidates or people that we've spoken with in this series have all had several issues that they particularly stressed, or they talked about a number of fundamental issues that would form the basis of the coalition, which I guess originally went back to what Humberto de la Calle had been talking about, well, about a year ago. And obviously for Humberto, the issue of the peace accord and other issues is primary. Galan talked about drugs and amongst other things, an issue. Cristo talked a lot about agrarian reform. And Angela, if I'm not mistaken, and Sandra can correct me, also spent a lot of time talking about the juventud, the youth, and those issues going forward. I'm sorry?
And women.
And women.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it's it's true, as you say, that with the Paro now, there's a whole new dimension. Yet there's a part of this, these are the same issues that have been plaguing Colombia for a long time. Inequality, these issues are known. You have made it as your primary platform for a while. Certainly, it seems to be the issues that you lead with are education and doing politics in a new way. But with, as you mentioned properly, we're in a whole new dimension now. I guess it would be interesting to hear, how do you view these other fundamental issues? How do you review putting back together the economy, and under what basis? How do you view the importance of agrarian reform, which no Colombian president has ever been able to do, with aborted attempts, I guess, by Pumarejo and Lleras Restrepo, but no one's ever been able to do that either. Where do you, in addition to education and politics in a way, what other issues are critically important to you, and how would you deal with them?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that, but given that I have been invited, cordially invited, and the title of this talk is Looking for the Center, give me a chance to explain how I understand politics, what we have been doing, and then we talk about agrarian reform. That I give you a quick answer. It's associated with the peace agreement, and we are working on how do you say seguridad alimentaria in English?
Food security.
Food security as part of our project. But let me talk about politics and the center and these discussions here, because we have to understand, when we build a coalition, where we come from. We are very different in many senses, and how we get together. And I'm going to take a few minutes to explain the way we have done politics. When I say we, I mean the movement that I lead, Compromiso Ciudadano, and I'm going to go back 21 years ago, because I think many of these issues are relevant for today. Okay, so now, first observation, what we did at the beginning was putting together, building bridges between different sectors of society, organizations, social organizations, ONGs, the academic world, the cultural world, the empresarial world, then within all these things. And we were getting together people from very different circumstances, places in society. I'm going back to Medellin 21 years ago. And what we were doing was, and what we decided to do was, we are going to do politics in Medellin at this moment with the people who are here, and we are going to get together through very different experiences. I have been handling with that for many years, very different paths, not formal political participation in traditional political parties, and we are going to put together a movement, and we are going to do politics, and we are going to take part in elections, and we're going to win the election, and that's what we said 21 years ago. And the very first step was, what are the principles that we share? We come from different spheres of society, and we make a big effort to sit together and say, we share these things about democracy, politics, and the way we want to interact with society from this very basic agreement that we had back then. 10 very basic points. Here we have again, in the coalition, the Hope Coalition, we have a set of basic ethical principles, political principles, which is analogous to what we did before when we come from very different places. We didn't come from within a party. We were not a branch of a party that is taking a different path. We were coming from different sectors of society, and we wanted to hold together. And the first step was said, what do we have in common? What do we share? Those were the principles. And I strongly believe in that. Now, let me add some marginal comment, because these all things have to do also with our origins, the paths that we have followed in life. I come from mathematics, which is very different from economics, political sciences, whatever, many other parts in life. But not only mathematics, but within mathematics, mathematical logic, which is the branch of mathematics that is associated with the rigor of mathematics and this expression, and I'm talking on behalf of mathematics, the truth associated with the mathematical constructions as saying, when you say this is mathematical, this is true, which is something very powerful, which doesn't happen, of course, in the world. So what we did was the principles, and we were getting together. We said, what are the problems that we want to solve? We didn't come with an ideology that would give us answers to every question that we had at hand. We were very diverse, very different, but we share some principles. Of course, we have things in common. We were formalizing them. Said, what are the problems that we want to solve in Medellin back then? And the problems were, the first problem was the inequalities in the city. The second problem back then was the violence that we had in the city of Medellin. And the third problem was corruption and the culture of illegality that the city of Medellin had. So we had the principles, we set up the problems that we want to solve, and we got together to solve the problems. When I say this, solve the problems was what we have understood, what these people coming from Comuna 6 of Medellin, it's called 12 de Octubre. They have worked on these elements. And we got together, discussed, put together many of our ideas, and came up with a way of understanding the city. We didn't plan to have a program for the whole world, only for the city of Medellin. Back then, we worked on them and we wrote a program that would collect all different experiences.
If I can interrupt for 1 second, I appreciate that and your history with that. But if I could, everybody in Medellin, except for a certain element, was for changing the culture of violence in Medellin, right? That was a fairly broad coalition to want to do that. In national issues, it's less evident that that's the case. Let's take agrarian reform, for example.
I'm going to finish, Ken.
Okay.
I'm close to finishing.
Okay.
I know that you want me to talk about the agrarian reform, but it's going to take a little longer in this conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. And I don't want to leave the story just on half of the story, because it has to do with what we do and with the construction of a coalition and a way of understanding politics, because the discussion is about the center or not. And what we are explaining you, or I am explaining here, is a way of doing politics that has nothing to do with the traditional consideration about left, right, and so on, because we came with a different approach to work on politics. So it's from what I'm saying and the experience, it's a rupture with the traditional conception, which is predominant, of course, because it makes things easier. But we came up with the understanding of different groups and building and giving answers to problems without following a script that would tell us what to do. Is simply elaborate that on the situation that we had in Medellin. And of course, the violent situation in Medellin, it's not that easy to say that it was a common point there. The circumstances were very different. The places that we were discussing were very different, but let's not discuss about that. And then what we did about how to get a vote, we came out with a way of coming out to the streets, the relationship to the citizens in the city of Medellin. And back then, the way we interacted with them in order to do politics and in order to get into power. So we mixed what we have been building from different sources, the way we carried out politics, the streets, and the way we related to citizens throughout the city. And that was our political project. And then with my claim, and so because I was taking directly to the world, what about the center? I am explaining a way of doing politics and getting into power because we got into power and then we govern. I'm not going to tell you about what we did in Medellin or not. That's not the point here. But I wanted to make this clear because it's important to understand how we come into politics, what path we follow, what we can contribute to the discussions in the country. And that's one of the marvelous things about being together with people who follow different paths. But that's important to understand when we talk about this political discussion. Now, my point of view within what we are doing in our country, it doesn't begin, agrarian reform, I mentioned to you, but the way we can handle this, and we have been doing it actually, first problem that we have to deal with is obvious, which is employment. And employment, of course, it has to do with the nature of the Colombian productivity activities, the production sector in our country, and how we are going to deal with employment in Colombia. And as a matter of fact, last year, we, the movement Compromiso Ciudadano, with the work of a few people, we presented an emergency employment program for Colombia. Usually in Colombia happens, you don't say anything. It's did you read what we wrote? Did you see what we presented in the middle of the pandemics? And that, I'm going to take a little time to explain that because we are thinking, and next week, I'm going to present an emergency employment program for youth, for young people.
Okay.
And of course, making within that program, making clear, for example, that young women are in the worst situation in Colombia at all levels in society, in particular within youth unemployment, which is one part of the problem. And this is very important to the way we understand the Colombian development and what we want to present to the country, we design a program that has to do with going back directly to each municipality in Colombia, the territory, and design a program that explains in each municipality in Colombia how to generate employment, emergency employment, explaining the nature of the conditions of each municipality about a process that we have done, I have led in Medellin and Antioquia in different instances, which is very important, Sandra, which is presupuesto participativo, participative budget, which is a way of discussing with the community, with a very good organization about projects that have to do with people. The community participates in them. It's not just a design by an authority. And that's very powerful to engage people, to determine what can be done in emergency conditions. And we have been working on that. And as I said, we're going to present next week one especially designed for young people, unemployed young people in Colombia, with many interesting factors. Given unemployment, we talk about the emergency unemployment situation that we have here in Colombia, and that's going to translate about a project about employment in Colombia, which has to do with the green economy. It has to do with different sectors that we have in our country, and we are building a program that has what we call strategic projects for our country. Strategic projects that would be 5 or 6, some special themes that we want to bring to Colombia to mobilize the whole country around those special themes that we have to handle. Natural renewable energies, how we make it a project, a national project, where in each territory it has an instance, and how we incorporate in developing such a program science, education, businesses, regulations, and so on. So we are building those strategic projects that we present to the country. One of those is food security for the country, seguridad alimentaria, but of course is associated with rural development that, as I mentioned to you, it would have to be directly related, because that was the best advance that we have had in Colombia about a rural development project, was the peace agreement that was signed, that has to do with the ownership of the land and the resources that are needed in order to have the rural development, what happens with the role that the state plays, the public services that are associated with that development, and so on. But let me go back again. Employment, and that has directly a relationship with youth in Colombia in education. We have to review the way that our educational system works, the different instances that we have for education, and associate education with territorial instances, understanding something that in Colombia is mentioned, but it's never done. And I'm talking about the relationship that we have, the national government, the local governments, the commitment of the academic world, mostly universities, the productive sector in every place, in civil society, that is mentioned, but it has never been done in a way that we think, and I'm talking from my experience, we can do it space by space in Colombia, and it can be done quickly, and we have the people in there in order to be working on that. And that would mean employment, education, and a redefinition of what we want with our educational system, understanding the youth concerns in the moment that we're living, the perspectives that we have, and what is happening today with this pandemia is changing. And the educational world is not going to be the same. No, we're not going to go back before the pandemic. We have to understand many of these things associated with the young people, with women, of course, associated with environment considerations, how we incorporate the environment in the development of this economy that we want to build, associated with these particular issues, and of course, associated with the rural world. Along those lines, we'll be working. Now, many things, we have to think them anew with what is happening, understanding them very deeply. And now, there's 1 year left.
Yeah.
So that we have
So
to.
it doesn't look that like it's going to be that long to think about all those issues. Let me ask you something precisely about this last point that you touch on, this employment issue, because we're running out of time, and it seems to me that the crucial issue here, particularly in this juncture, has to do effectively with young people, right? I mean, we're talking about young people and their access to the labor force. You're talking about employment. We're talking about education. And I think that the third topic related to young people has to do precisely with the relationship with the police force. And we know that this is not new. We know that this is not only part of the protest and the mobilization. We know that this is a more structural and long-term problem. So I would like to push you a little bit more to be more precise and to explain how your proposal in terms of employment for young people is different, and what you have in mind, to respond quickly and effectively to the needs that they are, that they are expressing on the streets right now. I want you to be a little bit more precise about what sort of proposal you have for access to education. They are particularly concerned about access to public education because they don't want to get more debt, access into the private education system because they are not going to be able to pay it. And then I also want you to be a little, I want to hear your thoughts on this very crucial issue from my point of view, the relationship between police and young people, and the tensions that we've seen developing in the context of the mobilization.
Again, 3 things that you asked for. Now, we have to understand, when we talk about youth and young people in the streets, they are very different. It's not just a single youth. And there are some who belong to the group of 22 million poor people that we have in Colombia, that live with families that can barely afford to eat 2 meals a day, and in the circumstances that we have, are suffering directly the impact of poverty increased by the pandemic. That group of young people requires some actions that are mostly known as ninis, that they are not working, they are not studying, many of them, because actually the pandemic has had an impact in what is happening in Colombia, because many of these kids have never been able, for a year and a half, roughly speaking, being able to socialize and try to get together around some sort of education. So that group of people requires an special, extraordinary action right now. Yes, and that can be done. And that can be done, and that can be done by going to the communities where they belong and getting together. And I'm telling things about, because we have done it. This is not brought from NASA. This we have done, and in all those communities, you can quickly identify, and that has to be done by the people who are there. I give you the generic form, but you can quickly identify in all those communities who are the institutions, the organizations that are relevant for the community. You can identify, for example, the set of teachers that are relevant to the community, and you find quickly, you can find, because in every neighborhood, there is some sort of organization, local organization, and you put them together with, of course, we need mediating for this. The church, the Catholic Church has done it very many times, and they can do it quickly here, and bring along with them, with the mayors have to take part in this. The authority has to take part in this. And if you bring these kids to start discussing, immediately you have to come up with some very basic funds so that they have some income, basic, to be part of the discussion. The being part of the discussions, they would receive some allowances that they can take with their families, and you start organizing these things, and immediately you can have, when I say immediately, is rather quickly, you can have some proposals that come directly from them, and they will be recognized, and give them some allowances, as I say, just to take part in the discussion. And that was a way of formalizing these things. And that works. And that can be done. And in Colombia, I'm sure in Cali, where we have the main discussion here, that can be done in Siloé, in any of those neighborhoods. That's a political decision. And you have to bring along the businessmen, that's expression, businessmen, businesswomen from the community, and sit them
They
there
are all
and
men.
see, here's the difference, and bring them along to be part of the discussions. And quickly that works. And I'm saying this because, as I said, we have done it. It's an experience. In every place they will find a way, but that can be done. That's one part of it. There is another path of students who are, let's say, at the university level, who are in the streets from a broad social spectrum. That's another group of young people. Of course, they have common things in among the different groups, but they are claiming for the education, the university, the way, the access to the university system, the educación superior, and that's another discussion. And we have been talking about the public university being free for people, and that can be done and should be done, and this is the opportunity to make it permanent. And we have to discuss about people who have gone, because don't forget this, half of the students in Colombia who go to the university, let's say, half go to private institutions. The public system doesn't have the ability to have the positions, the places for all of them. We have to take into account many people who have no resources. And as a matter of fact, and the things that happen, as I mentioned, we presented an emergency employment program last year. We presented, and it's there, an emergency program for students so that they would not drop out from the universities. And we have to deal with that case about how we can help students who are going to go to private education, but come from the they have no resources, economic funds, in order to be part of it. That has to be redesigned. And not only that, because we always think about just the tuition being paid, but how they manage to stay in school and what's the program, because something that is forgotten in these discussions, close to 50% of the students who come into the university, by half of their studies, they have dropped, which is, we never mention the meaning of having these students who make an effort and go that long and they drop out of school. So all these things we have to work, but we have to be clear about the segments and the role that we can play and organize with universities and the association with the productive system. What kind of relationship can we have with the productive system at every local level? Understand the role that SENA would play within the development and the building the opportunities for young people. That's quite a project, deep project. And I'm very confident that we can present the best project. That's the challenge. And that will be part of the discussion. But we have been working on that. And that's what motivated me. One of the main reasons that I abstain in politics is that we can do it. And we have to take into account the difference in the territories in Colombia, and people can participate, and we have the tools.
Sergio,
I'm missing one more point from Sandra's question.
Police.
Okay, police. That's an issue. It's a political issue, and that has to be dealt with right now. Initiate the discussion. It's clear. You explained it very well in your book. What happened in the year 2019 with Dylan and all what happened in there was a way of finding out that the police in Colombia is not designed to understand the times that we are living. It's a police associated with fighting narco traffic, fighting guerrillas, and what we are expecting is social expressions that have to be dealt with a very different patterns and forms, and it's urgent. And I don't know if the government is going to do it because they say that they already are handling a police reform in Congress. But this requires a national discussion, and beginning with something that has been lacking here in Colombia is recognition by the president that these things have happened, that we have many people, mostly young people, being killed in Colombia because the action of the police and the way they have handled this. And that requires that. And I think, and that can be done immediately, but that is a political decision. And the ones who are running the country, pues, they have to take that into account. If I were running the country, I would be saying what I'm doing, what I'm explaining here. Actually, I don't think if we were running the country, we would be in this condition, but that's another problem, but another talk.
Sergio, thanks for that answer. Just a couple more questions. I have one, and then I want to go to Sandra. With all of the folks that we've spoken to, we've asked them, as I mentioned earlier, what are some of their key issues? And we've also asked them, what are the issues that they may have to sacrifice in order to form a coalition, right? Because there's always some give and take in a coalition. Angela talked about one of the things the thing that she would have to sacrifice is she wanted more state involvement in the economy, if I'm not mistaken. I guess the question I have for you is, in forming this coalition, where do you think that you may have to sacrifice a bit on a substantive issue in order to make sure the coalition holds together? And related to that is, for example, do you share Galan's position that there needs to be a radical rethink of the entire drug strategy in Colombia?
Well, I don't think in terms of what I have to give up because being a member of the coalition. I just think that we can make better better proposals, enrich them in the discussion. And if you read the principles and everyone has a particular way of relating to the world in politics, for example, Galan always, whenever we are, he always mentions the drug policies and necessary change in that, which I agree. But that's not my main issue. And everyone has different issues that they want to come to develop. That's the way we relate to the world, to politics, to the situation that we live. So when we talk about employment, of course, this is a big component about education. And there is one thing that has to be running everywhere, which is associated with the way we do politics and the fight against corruption, which we haven't mentioned here today. But for me, it's crucial in a country where you can see something which is very dramatic, which is we have lost confidence in the institutions. And political parties are institutions within a society. And that, if we don't work on building or rebuilding or redefining trust in the institutions, we are in deep trouble. And we are seeing that. And of course, the way the citizens talk about not having trust in the institutions, that's not the word. That's very sophisticated institutions and so on. But the word that comes in there is corruption. The word that expresses that is corruption, and we cannot forget about it. And it has to do also with the way we do politics and clientelism and the way votes are bought in Colombia and things like that. And those are not minor issues, are very deep issues, deep. But, well, we have no time to talk about all these things. But if you look at my friends that belong to the coalition, of course, I talk about corruption. It's not that they don't talk, but I think it's a main issue as I state here. The building of trust is crucial for us so that we can handle this problem that we have. The next government is going to be very difficult for the obvious reasons, but by the visions that we have in our society. And this is a country that is going under a big stress. I believe that polarization is an issue. And when I talk about polarization, is a way of doing politics, which means if you are not with me, you are my enemy. You divide the world in two groups, friends or enemies. That's what I understand by polarization, which is a form of politics, which is very useful. And then if you are my enemy, I have to get rid of you. And that's the world language. And that translates in todo vale. Anything you do, anything goes. And that translated into politics is directly opposed to building trust in society. That's my deep understanding of these things. And we may disagree, but that's very deeply ingrained in what I have seen, what I have learned. And I know that many things have been changed. I have changed in many aspects, but that's very deep in what we have to do. So I always talk about education, but any place where we go, employment, the relationship with education, that is going to be a crucial thing for Colombia, for our young people. I'm very clear, and this what happened here, this pandemic obligates us to look at things very differently. It's quite an opportunity. Of course, knowledge as a part, culture as a part of what we do in our society. In my belief, actually, this is an issue that if we can handle well, is an issue that would allow us to be together as Colombians, at least behind one project, national project in our country. Education. It is associated with young, is associated with women, is associated with environment. And that would be a project that we need as a country. We weren't, unfortunately for us, we weren't able to get together around the peace construction coming from the peace agreement. That was the opportunity that we had in our country. And we didn't, and we didn't use it. Unfortunately, of course, we have to continue working on the peace agreement and building the peace, but we should all rally behind one project. And I think the project is the one that I mentioned to you, associated with employment, education, and so on.
Sergio, we ran out of time, so this is going to be the last question. This is the second time that you're going to be presidential candidate in Colombia, and I was wondering, what would you do differently this time around from what you did 3, 4 years ago as a presidential candidate in terms of strategy of running your campaign? I don't know. You give it the emphasis that you want to give, and in the context of that question, would you, with the benefit of hindsight, no, and knowing how the government has done it so far, um, would you promote the blank vote again?
I'm showing you
So,
throughout this conversation what things can be done differently. I'm being member of a coalition, taking part in the coalition, building the coalition, working with the other people, and making these issues. That's quite different. I don't know if you believe so, Sandra, but now there are some basic issues that, of course, we all have in our lives, define our personalities, define the way we relate to the world, and those are going to be me forever. Education, the fight against corruption associated with a way of doing politics, which is not the traditional politics. We were born outsiders. I never belonged, we never belonged to traditional political parties. Yes, and I'm sitting down with people who come from traditional political parties. Angela Maria Robledo, she quit the Green Party, went to be with Petro, and then she's back into the Green Party, and we are sitting, and I hope we get back to sit together, working together. So that's a way of doing things that is crucial, and that's quite a change in the sense of understanding these things. And now your question, Sandra, I voted blank back then. I am convinced, and since you are such a smart woman, you know that you take decisions with the information that you have. Yeah. And with the information that I had, the role we had played in the campaign, and with the things that I lived, I voted blank, and that was a conscious vote. It wasn't that I woke up and I decided that I was to go black. It was very conscious.
I
And
agree with that,
situations in life
but
going
just
to put us,
briefly to my
because my
question.
purpose is to be, and we will see, I hope to
Uh-huh.
be the person who wins the primaries within the coalition, and all of them want to be there. But I'm sure that whoever wins, I hope to be the one, is going to be the president of Colombia. And that's what we are doing now.
Thank you.
What is going to happen in 1 year? I don't know.
I agree with the fact that you made that decision based on the information that you had at that point, but my question is different. You have different information now. That's precisely why I said with the benefit of hindsight, with the information that you have right now, would you change that decision?
That makes no sense, Sandra. I'm sorry. I'm sorry
Okay.
to say, but you can say that with the information that you have right now, because if I go back to when I was 15 years old, I could have followed another path with the information that I have right now. The information that we had it at the moment. We can discuss about what we are seeing now, but going back, that's very easy. Those are discussions that the purpose is what we are doing now, where we are heading now, how we are doing things now. I'm happy with the things that we're doing. We have quite a challenge right in front of us, and we have to move on with the coalition and win the election.
Hmm.
And that's it. And I hope we win, and I hope you vote for us.
Fair enough.
Sergio,
Okay?
Sandra was going to have the last question, but there is one question if Sandra will permit. We've asked all the other folks with whom we spoke is, if you look at the cúpula or the governing group, as it were, of the coalition, I understand it's a it's a work in progress, but they're all, let's be frank, white guys of a certain age. Maybe with with Galan, who would be maybe a little bit younger. Now there's no women in it. There's no visible ethnic minorities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, indigenous people and the like. How is it that one could form a broad coalition to win a campaign and to lead a country afterwards without bringing more diversity into the leadership? How do you do that? Or is it something obviously you prefer to take care of immediately to the extent that you can? How do you go about doing that?
I can give you two answers. One is I have governed before. For example, I'm going to say something, and it's going to sound cocky, but please take it, because I think this is a very serious issue. And we have a Colombian society that has to build to have inclusion, include people from different sectors. All these sectors that you have mentioned have to be part of this. That's very easy, easy to say, very difficult to implement due to the circumstances that we have had in our country, our culture, and we have to change it, and we have to have many advances and many changes with respect to what can be done. I claim that in government, the two governments that I led, Medellin and Antioquia, are the governments that have done more for women in Colombia. It's an example. I'm not saying we had done it. We did it carefully. We implemented the politics. We worked in many aspects and that brought in front of Colombia and Medellin and Antioquia society, which is very conservative in many senses, we brought along the role of women. And it was powerful. And we did it because we had the political will, the political decision, and it was very deep, beginning with the first step that we took when I got into the mayor's office, excuse me. The first thing that I did was not a single peso in Medellin for beauty contests. And we created the contest of talented young women. And we began a transformation that was powerful, and I am very proud of that. That's what I said. Sounds cocky, but we are in this world, and many times what we have done is forgotten or not, it's not known. And that is part of what we have to do. We had a program, Politics for Women, bring women to participate. That's a difficult path, but the fact that it's difficult, it doesn't mean that cannot be done. We have to make an effort always and incorporated just the name to say women in all these actions. And yesterday, I am in a Zoom meeting. Who is going to talk? And then only men are talking. I said something that I said during the campaign, alternate. If there is no alternation, there is no conversation. Many things like that we have done. Still have plenty of work. But the crucial thing is the will to have the changes that we have, incorporate them into what we think and how we act. And I would love to have Sandra coming into the coalition and being one of the candidates with us. And we have to work on that. And we still have to work. But it's a challenge. That's all what I can say. We are doing it.
She can't do that because she's co-moderating the series. She can't do that. I won't allow that to happen. So and we have to look for. There are many, and this is a broad world. And what is happening today, the way politics is going on today, is a way that scares people away. Very difficult to have someone who is willing to come into this world with the social networks and all these things. Difficult, very difficult. But the political will is there, the experience is there, and what we did is there. And I'm very proud of what we have done. Thank you. thank you very much, Sergio. We've abused your time, and
Yeah.
you've engaged us fully. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much for the
And,
patience.
No. There's a lot to talk about. We assume this is not the last time we're going to have a conversation like this with you in this format, in addition to perhaps in other formats. But thank you very much. Thank you for all of our listeners who have stayed with us while we've gone about 17 minutes over time. A video of this event will be, as I mentioned earlier, will be available at ccacanada.com in both Spanish and English tonight or tomorrow at the latest. We thank our interpreter, Gloria Mejia, from sitting in Medellin. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Marta Blackwell, our vice president, without whose work these events certainly would not happen. I remind everybody as the last note that we will be back with a public event on June 7th, the day after the Peruvian presidential elections, for an analysis of what that means in Peru going forward. We will continue to announce the upcoming events in our series of looking for the center in Colombia. We have other people we're working on lining up and more events for that as well. With all of that, again, thank you, Sergio. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here with you. Sandra, come to the coalition and I'm sure it will be much better. Much better. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Listen, that the first question that you asked, because you wanted me to talk about, was agrarian reform. And we talked a lot about many other things in the middle, but we had to talk about this before.
No, fair enough, but the first one I wanted to talk about was...
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Thank you very much.
Ciao. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, bye-bye.